What is going on, YouTube? Andrew Miller, editor over at Hook'emHeadlines.com, coming back at you. Kind of second video here, at least recording in the last 24 hours. I wanted to do one more video before the turn of the calendar year talking about this class, and we had a perfect excuse to do it today with Texas landing four-star wide receiver, St. John Bosco product, DeAndre Moore Jr. Texas was able to finally flip him from Louisville tonight, and he signed his letter of intent, so he is officially a signee as part of the Longhorns 2023 class. I want to break down a little bit of what he brings to the table for Texas, different parts of his game, how he fits into the grand scheme of things with the 2023 class, and where this class goes from here. I'm going to include some film on him in this video, so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. But just to quickly touch on how he ended up in the class, Texas, and I will say that if you would rather read about this, get a little bit more of an in-depth perspective that way, did a piece over at Hook'emHeadlines.com that I'll put in the description below. He is someone that Brennan Marion, Steve Sarkisian personally invested a lot of time in the last few months. After Texas missed on a four-star Longview receiver, Jalen Hale, when he committed to Alabama in late September, Texas turned a lot of focus to DeAndre Moore. He became one of the top receiver priorities in this class, if not the top guy. And, I want to say I think he made a couple of visits to Texas before his official visit, which was November 12th. He visited for the TCU game, which kind of despite Texas's lackluster offense in that game, he still came away from that official visit pretty impressed by the staff, the program, the direction that Sark has this thing headed in. And so that bodes really well when you have that sort of reaction after kind of flatlining on offense. Now, there's plenty to like for DeAndre Moore with how he fits in the 2023 class and, the bond he built during that official visit weekend. A real turning point for me in this recruitment, not really a turning point, but like something that was like, okay, this is this is going in a really positive direction for Texas. He took a surprise unofficial visit to Texas during pre-signing day weekend, which was last weekend. Georgia was pretty upset about him taking that visit. Louisville probably wasn't thrilled about that either, given kind of the late push they were getting. And so, I think that was ultimately something that was like, okay, Texas is going to be able to seal the deal here. It took a while. He pushed back his, what was supposed to be originally a first signing day announcement. And there wasn't a whole lot of certainty as to the way that would go. There was some talk coming into the second signing day, which is today, the day that we're recording, that he would ultimately end up choosing Texas, and that is what happened. In terms of what he brings to the table for the 2023 class, he is the third wide receiver commit. He's just, I've mentioned this in the article I did about him, he's a quick burst playmaker. He's someone that you can use in a multitude of different ways. Long term, I think he projects as a slot wide receiver. But, he's got a lot of route versatility. When you watch his game, there's a lot of different things that he thrives in. He's just got a lot of fun film to watch. The first thing that kind of jumped out to me for his film was his ability, especially in the screen game, or just really when there's open space after the catch, his ability to find the hole, follow his blockers, and just do a lot of damage in the open field. He runs through wimpy tacklers, strong lower body. He's got a good frame right now that's ready to compete at the collegiate level immediately. 6 foot, about 190. And you can see that build, and you can see the way he moves in some of the high school competition, man amongst boys at times, especially as a senior. And so, he really just explodes once he gets once he gets the ball in his hands. It's just full go. He's able to burn guys in the open field. He's got some good east-west movement, but really north-south. Once he gets going there, he's hard to stop. And that's where there's so many different ways that you can utilize him pre-snap and post-snap, because just because he projects as a long-term slot wide receiver doesn't mean that you can flex him out, or that you can't flex him out wide. He's someone that can go up and get those contested 50-50 balls on the boundary. They can fight hard on those go routes, or even if, you have to come back to the ball or, end up coming across the middle, work between the numbers. These are all ways that he can thrive. And that I mentioned the route versatility earlier. He's a very technical route runner, but I'll dig into that part of his game here in a moment. He really does thrive in a multitude of different ways that you would use him pre-snap. Jet sweeps, a lot of motion, tosses out of the backfield, things like that. You can really get those legs moving before the snap, and it's just fun to watch what he can do to burn opposing defenders after he gets the ball in his hands. Again, I mentioned he's a yards after the catch receiver, and that's going to show up right away once he's really getting those live game reps on a consistent basis with Texas. Kind of how I think he's going to fit with Texas near term and long term. I mentioned the long term projection as a slot receiver. Depending on what happens with Jordan Whittington, if he decides to return to college, I think the plan is going to be for Moore to probably sit the bench in 2023 or sit the bench behind him. See where his game goes coming out of camp. Get to learn under Jordan Whittington for a year, because I think there's a lot that he can get from Whittington. I think room for improvement for Moore is still some of that downfield blocking ability, which Whittington really excels at. And so I think that's kind of an ideal scenario here. If Whittington doesn't return, that's where things can get a little bit more interesting. I don't think it's necessarily ideal to have Moore as the day one slot receiver next year. But, if Whittington's gone, I think you have to include him in the competition there in spring ball. If he is enrolling early, I need to do some digging on that. But, near term, I think you're going to see kind of some limited reps for him. There's more reps to be had right now, because Texas is looking a little thin at wide receiver right now, depending on what happens with Xavier Worthy and Jordan Whittington. But you got some uncertainty surrounding all three of the projected starting wide receivers as it stands now next year. Even Isaiah Neyor on the boundary. He's coming back from a season-ending ACL tear that he suffered in fall camp. So Agiye Hall's gone. Troy Mary already entered the portal. Don't know what's going to happen with Jaden Alexis. Tarek Milton's gone probably next offseason. So a lot of reps to be had for these guys like DeAndre Moore, Ryan Niblett, Jonte Cook. So I do like the projection for him long term as a slot wide receiver. But like I said, there's some different ways to get him involved in the passing game, and I think it would be interesting maybe in some garbage time situations next year, a spring game, something like that, to see what he can do with some pre-snap motion, maybe motion him out to the outside on the boundary, get him the ball out that way. I mentioned how he's able to follow those blocks, maybe see how he can follow a guy like Jordan Whittington and really turn on those burners in the open field. Sark's a guy that likes to layer concepts, likes to get guys the ball out in space, and, a lot of parts of DeAndre Moore's game fit these concepts exactly, so that fit is really good. Now, the longer-term fit, I've kind of been mentioning this for a while now in this video. I do think that it's going to be as a slot wide receiver by 2024. You can see DeAndre Moore as the projected starting slot wide receiver. At that point, Jordan Whittington will be headed for the NFL, assuming, again, he returns in 2023. And there's no obvious option for slot receiver beyond that. Maybe Brennan Thompson, Savion Red. They've been looking okay in bowl practice. Savion Red's been looking pretty good. And those are guys that you would have to include in that conversation. But for the time being, I think DeAndre Moore is the highest upside slot wide receiver option that you have, or at least certainly the most polished. And so that's something to keep in mind there. He's definitely a year two contributor when I think of when he's really going to come on for Texas. So, this is a good transition point to kind of what's next for the 2023 class, and, really where Texas goes from here. I don't think that Texas is done with high school recruiting in the 2023 class. I think the name that everyone's watching is 5-star tight end Deuce Robinson. Seems like a lot of the momentum is favoring Georgia in that recruitment right now, but I'm never going to count anything out, because Texas, Jeff Banks, they're going to recruit that till the very end. Robinson looks to be drawing his decision out to signing day, the usual, traditional National Signing Day, which is essentially now the late signing period, February 2023. So there's some time here. We'll see what happens there. I think Texas might actually be in second place right now, or at least tied with USC. So, there could be some movement there to watch, and we'll continue to monitor that. In terms of wide receiver recruiting, Moore was kind of the last piece among high school recruits. Maybe if there's some coaching changes around the Power 5 in the next couple months, that you could see some movement there. But I think the attention's now going to turn to the portal. There's no obvious portal wide receiver option among the guys currently available. Texas is going to be more patient there. A guy that I had mentioned a ton that I love is Dominic Lovett. He just committed to Georgia today, and Texas didn't look to be, while they looked to be interested, it did not look like that was the obvious landing spot for him, and that school of thought turned out to be correct with him committing to Georgia along with Mississippi State's Rod Thomas today, so, they got a nice haul there. Anyway, focusing on Texas here with this video, it's going to be a long game, I think, for Texas recruiting out of the portal a wide receiver. Again, with Ajayi Hall expected to enter the portal and maybe some more portal losses in line here. I mentioned two names to watch for a while here, Casey Kane and Jaden Alexis. Depending on what's happening with Jaden Alexis' knee injuries, it's unfortunate the way that his collegiate career has turned so far, kind of like Troy O'Meara. He just can't stay healthy. Texas can have some spots open in that room, and I think a lot of those are going to be filled by portal guys. So we'll kind of keep a finger on the pulse there, especially once bowl season ends. The other two names that I, and I'll include a link to the article below to kind of dig into these a little bit more, are Cameron Brandt, Stanford, 3-star Stanford defensive line commit. He's not signing until February, and he's someone that Texas has, if they haven't established communication with, that they have kicked the tires on, and there's probably a reason that he's not signing until February. Texas has a need along the defensive line, and I think that's something they're going to look further into. He's a name to watch among high school prospects in the 2023 class. The other name, and actually I'll mention two names here, guys that signed on the first signing day, which is yesterday as of when we're recording. 4-star Waco Connolly athlete, Texas looking at his linebacker Jelani McDonald, former Oklahoma State commit. I believe that's going to end up falling Texas's way. He's announcing publicly on January 7th at the All-American Bowl. The other name to watch, 3-star Pebble Brooks defensive back Tyler Scott. Same thing, signed on December 21st for signing day, and then is announcing on January 7th. And I think that's ultimately going to fall in Auburn's favor, but it wouldn't be shocking if Texas somehow pulled that off, because he was recently on campus for a visit that seemed to go well. So those are some names to watch. Like I said, I want to do a quick breakdown in this video as well of DeAndre Moore's game. But yeah, keeping this video a little bit shorter for y'all, and kind of just touching on where Texas is at in 2023 class and names to watch that could be up next. But anyway, that is pretty much it. Probably going to come back here with a video before too long. At least talking a little bit more about the bowl game coming up on December 29th, a little less than a week. That's pretty much it. Welcome.